Welcome back to video number 3 on derivative rules. This one dealing with two trig functions, specifically sine and cosine. So we'll start with given f of x equals sine of x, its derivative, interestingly enough, is cosine of x. And so it shouldn't be a huge surprise that given f of x equals cosine of x, its derivative has something to do with sine. And the derivative of cosine is negative sine of x. And these two functions already have a relationship to each other. One is just a horizontal shift of the other. But also, they have a naturally occurring relationship where their derivatives are also some version of the other function. So a very interesting setup. And with that, the biggest issue people tend to have are the sign changes when dealing with these derivatives. So what I visualize is what I call the derivative wheel. And it's all based around your knowledge of the unit circle. And on the unit circle, on the positive y-axis is where you have positive sine values. The positive x-axis corresponds to positive cosine, negative y-axis goes with negative sine, and the negative x-axis corresponds to negative cosine. And notice, if you go clockwise around the unit circle, what you are developing are the derivatives for these functions. Positive sine leads to positive cosine leads to negative sine, but you can keep going. The derivative of negative sine is negative cosine, and the derivative of negative cosine is positive sine. It loops back, and after 4 derivatives, you'd be right back where you started. And now let's go ahead and give ourselves some space and start working with some examples differentiating functions that involve sine and cosine. So for the first example, we'll set up f of x equals 3 times the sine of x. Constant coefficients don't have an effect on the derivative, so we're just differentiating the sine of x really, and f prime of x will be 3 cosine of x. Now let's try one that involves cosine now. So we'll set up f of x equals 2 cosine of x, and we'll tack on another term. Let's tack on an x squared at the end. So derivative here, derivative of 2 cosine of x would be negative 2 sine of x. We get that sign change when we go from cosine to sine. And the derivative of x squared through the power rule would be a plus 2x. So not too bad, just a little bit of memorization and making sure you're aware of the sign changes. So let's set up one more problem putting everything together. We'll set up g of x equals 1/2 times sine of x minus, let's go with 10 times cosine of x, and we'll go ahead and add on a power term. Let's go with 2x to the 4th. So for this problem, 3 terms, 3 derivatives, and g prime of x would equal derivative of 1/2 sine of x is 1/2 cosine of x, no sign change. The derivative of the minus 10 cosine of x, though, is going to have a sign change. Going from cosine to sine will change this to a positive 10 times the sine of x. And using power rule on the last term, the derivative of 2x to the 4th is 8x to the 3rd power. And that is it for dealing with derivatives of sine and cosine. The next couple rules will be a little bit more formula-based and slightly more complicated, but if you followed everything up to this point, you should be in pretty good shape. Thank you for watching.